Well, thank you all for coming. Senator Murkowski's on her way down right now. I think she's probably on about the third floor right now, heading this way, so it shouldn't be too much longer. I thought I'd open it up by making a few introductions. First of all, I'd like to introduce Senator Begich from the great state of Alaska. He's here. I believe you're the honorary chairman of the committee. Is that how that thing was?
Honorary charity or something.
And the big committee. My name is Bruce Schockler. I'm a commercial fisherman from Alaska. I fish for several different species throughout the year. And we have the rest of the panel here. Starting over here, I have Dane Summers from the state of Maine. He's with the Lobster Promotion Council. I have Phil Lansing. Phil Lansing is a commercial fisherman in Alaska when he's not doing his day job of economics. Dr. David Veal is with the American Shrimp Processors Association in the Gulf. We have Natalie Webster. She's representing us from the West Coast. She's with the American Albacore Association. And then Jack Brooks with J.M. Clayton Company in Cambridge. And just in time for the Senator, Chairwoman. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hello to all of our panelists. I had an opportunity to visit with several of you when you were at the seafood show in Boston. An incredible event, a great opportunity for all of us as coastal states and those engaged in the business of advancing our seafood industry. Great opportunity to showcase great products, good ideas, discuss some of the challenges that are in front of us, but also an opportunity to focus on the very real jobs that come with the seafood industry. And in the state of Alaska, this is our #1 private sector job creator, and we are darn proud of how we have been able to continue a tradition of harvesting from the sea and doing it in a manner that is responsible, that works well. We actually have written into our Constitution the principles of sustained yield, maximum yield, but doing so with an eye towards conservation and an eye towards sustainability. We're proud of what we do and how we do it and the jobs that are created for Alaskans and their families. I'm really pleased that Bruce has spearheaded this gathering here today as the co-chair of the Oceans Caucus. Our design, our thought in bringing this caucus together, Senator Sheldon and I, was to actually form something that was going to produce some outcomes, and outcomes that would be good and positive, not only for staff, but for other members. So to be able to offer you a panel of experts, folks within the industry, to give their perspective, I think is important to bring this from the folks that were there in Boston and bring them down here to Washington, D.C. to you. So I would ask you to use this panel as a resource for you in terms of what it is that we can be doing to build out an industry that is a good, strong American, made in the USA industry. How we can be doing more for the jobs. What do we need to be doing in terms of ensuring that we've got not only a good, strong jobs market, but that we've got a consumer base that wants to be part of the seafood industry. I made the comment last month that our #1 exporter out of the state of Alaska, Japan, when it comes to our seafood market, is changing. Used to be that seafood was what the Japanese sought to eat. Well, with the changing demographic and changing consumer preferences, that demand that Alaskans have come to rely on for a long time is changing. What is happening? What are the trends out there in terms of the consumer and the market? And how can we be adaptable and nimble? How can we use our technologies not only to advance the jobs, but to kind of stay ahead of what some of the trends may be within the industry? So we're going to leave it to the panel of experts to present good things. I can tell you they've already done it once, so you should be primed to knock them dead here today. But thank you for your commitment, and again, Bruce, your efforts in leading on not only the focus on seafood jobs, but really what we can be doing more from a marketing perspective to make sure that people in this country know the benefits of America's seafood industry and the good things that they present. So keep doing good work here, and enjoy the commentary today. Thank you.
The senator mentioned we sort of did a practice run of this up in Boston at the Boston Seafood Show a few weeks ago, and it went very well, and we're very happy to be here because of that. We had a very great showing, a lot of people, and Senator Begich did us the honor of closing out the show with his final comments. But today, I understand he's a little pressed for time, won't be able to stay here the whole time, so I was going to ask him if he'd like to come up and say a few words as honorary chairman of this caucus, and also our main go-to guy in commerce at the moment on the committee, the Oceans Committee, and since we do have the Oceans Caucus, what a fitting way to have some more input. Thank you, Senator.
Let me, I took this because I'm going to be on a plane soon. I figure the only problem is TSA will not give me a can opener. So I got to figure this out. So that's about packaging. So actually, I wanted to bring this up because I first want to say thank you guys for doing this. This was a great format at Boston when I was up there also, and it was great. You know, the problem with that convention center when you go into it, you know, they have these workshops, but it's so hard to sit in there when you smell all the food cooking, and it's not just one or two people, it's dozens of people cooking the best seafood that you can imagine. So it was hard, I want you to know that, you guys, to stay in there for that whole hour and a half. But I did take some samples of food when I was down there, and it was great. But let me first say thank you all very much for doing this again. It was a great presentation. I know you'll interweave the data, which is very important, and how it affects individual industries, but it is all about how do you market the product. And I gave some examples when I did the closing at the workshop there in Boston, and think about it from this perspective. And some of you may remember this, some of you may not, based on your age. Tomorrow I turn 50, so I remember this, and that is, I remember the marketing campaign on pet rocks. And now some of you may remember this. You had a rock in a box, and people paid, I think it was $7.95 for this thing. And they sold millions. And you kind of scratch your head and say, how did that happen? Well, it's because it's marketing. It's packaging and marketing. What do you got? A product. And if you do it right, you can make some incredible things happen. We take some of our scrap salmon, and now we call it Yummy Chummies, dog food in a nice package. We sell a lot of it. I just had a package of salmon strips in my fridge I was snacking on last night, and if you get salmon strips, they're usually handed to you in a cellophane wrap and then jammed in a plastic bag, and that's how you would get them. Now you get them a nice fancy package called salmon jerky. It's all about the packaging of the product and marketing. That's what will continue to move the industry forward. That's what Alaska was successful in doing, and why 60% of the market of wild-caught fish is Alaskan. I tell people all the time, you don't care if you're sitting in McDonald's or the fanciest restaurant, the odds are you're going to touch our product at some point. But that's for every seafood product in this country. If you package it, market it, people will buy it because it's a good product. That's the best thing. We start from a product that's a solid base product it's not something we have to pretend and try to describe and oversell. It sells itself once they touch it, once they eat it, once they see it. But it's our job, and that's what I think this is a very important opportunity to hear a great panel on how do you package and market the products of the future and what we have today so more people buy our product and our domestic produced product here. So I want to thank you guys for your continuing battle and opportunity, convincing people, and I think that's what it takes, just having people understand this is a big industry, it's American grown industry. Doesn't matter if you're in the Northeast or the Gulf or the Pacific or Alaska or in the interior waters, our seafood product is high quality. We just got to figure out how to continue to package it and market it better so more and more people consume it as a basic part of their nutritional diet. So thank you guys again, and I'm going to figure out how to open this before I get on the plane in about 2 hours. So thank you all very much. Enjoy your conference and enjoy the presentation. It has a lot of good information you'll be able to see here. Thank you very much.
You know, for the last couple of years, we've been working to put this coalition together. It's a national coalition. We've got 5 different separate state legislatures that have passed resolutions supporting the goals of economic development, new product development, education, bringing new value to the industry. We've got over 75 organizations from Hawaii all the way to Maine and down through the Gulf. It's been very, very exciting to see the amount of support there is for something that is, we're trying to make money here. As I tell people, we're not catching these fish for crowd or we're not we're not catching these things for predator control. This is all about food. And you know, not too long ago, we were pretty much into, it was just a resource extraction business. But we're in the food business now. We're in a world economy. You have to pay attention to what people want, from starting at age 14 all the way through. Because just next thing you know, you turn around and blink, and they're the ones that are in the grocery store. And you have to put the dynamics together in an industry to keep that progress moving and to increase the value, increase the products that everybody wants, or you fall behind. And much of that is happening in America. There's people falling behind, and there's people keeping up, and there's actually people that are getting ahead. And what our goal here is that economic development. And with that economic development, we're going to have what it takes for new investment, new jobs, and what we're after today, which this panel here, I would like them to be able to show you some of the challenges in the U.S. seafood industry, as well as the opportunities in the industry, and with some success stories. And I think at the end of the day, you'll see an industry that is poised to become even a bigger part of the economy than they are right now. We've had a few successful projects out there in the last few years that have given us proof that it can happen, has given us models to work off of. And I think, like I say, at the end of the day, you'll agree that we're right there to increase these jobs and increase the value of our seafood industry by a substantial amount. Because if you look at it, we all know the big difference we have here is that we can't go out into the ocean and produce more fish. All we've got is what Mother Nature will give us on a good year, and there's years when it's not good, but it's all just whatever will be produced for us, and we have to make the most of that. And so that's where this industry is quite a bit different than any other industry in the United States. So hopefully you'll get something out of this today. And Phil, maybe you could you can give them the data that everybody's going to work off of. And this data, by the way, comes from National Marine Fisheries Service. This is stuff that if you know how to find it, it's all right there. We wanted to use these types of numbers that everybody's on the same page of music. We're all using the same numbers. So there's nothing that you can't find and work off of the same as we do. Phil?
Thanks, Bruce. I had hoped today to talk about fish, but we don't get to. We're going to have to talk about jobs. But we do like fish, so after the show, if you want to talk about fish, we can do that. As Bruce said, I'm a tame economist, and I'm also a commercial fisherman. I was asked by the Seafood Coalition last winter to figure out how many seafood jobs there really are in this country. And of course, it's a complex question. It's not just producers, it's the people who build the boats and fuel them up and process the seafood and look after the fish in terms of management and so forth, and sell the fish, and the retail chain goes way on up. So it's a complex question. Fortunately, some very smart people at the National Marine Fisheries Service doped it out with a big economic model called the IO, or Input-Output Model. And they got some interesting results. These are from 2009. It's just over 1 million jobs in 2009 by their estimates, about a $30 billion piece of gross national product, supporting $116 billion in actual sales. So that's a pretty big economic chunk in this country. Okay, it's a big number. Ho-hum. How about some trends? Let's move on and see if we can't find out a little more here. Because the fact is that while we have all these jobs and this wealth, we leave a tremendous number of jobs and wealth on the table. Very simple trends I'm showing you here. Look, first, U.S. catch has gone down over the last 20 years. It's outside of this discussion. It's just, there it is. The supply has dwindled. Moving right on. U.S. catch value has also dropped during the same time period, which kind of makes sense. If the amount is down, you think you get less money for it. But now we come to something a bit more curious. The supply of fish is down long term, and the average price of fish is down or lately flat during the same time period. That's kind of counterintuitive when we think about economics. If the supply is down, wouldn't the price go up? Could be. What about demand? Demand must have dropped, right, to explain this reduced price? Anybody with me on that? Yeah. Demand has not dropped. Demand for seafood has skyrocketed. There's the number. So this is getting quite counterintuitive. Supply is down, demand is down, and price is down. Even in a price-taking industry over the long term, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But maybe the big companies, the processors, distributors are in a price war. They've been seeking market share. Or, well, also the other hypothesis would be that it's price efficiencies. You know, lower costs, maybe fuel bills are down. But let's go for now with the increasing market share notion. Oops, that's not what is going on either. We have reduced supply, increased demand, reduced catch, and increased imports, so that is to say, reduced U.S. market share. So there it is. I didn't mean to be confusing. Under 15% of U.S. seafood consumption is supplied by our U.S. catch. So something here is not adding up. Something is not working. Here's the graphic that describes it. And I think there's a couple explications here. One is that because the U.S. manages for sustainability in our fisheries, it means that our supply is a bit erratic. If the resource runs out, or looks like it's going to run out, we quit harvesting. We'll try to let it rebuild. And we're competing with people worldwide who can bring in the same products or substitutable products where they're not doing that. They don't exist under the same rules that we do. So we have a piece of market share, we would spend some money, carve it out, then we can't fill that market share with our own product. We're gone, somebody else gets it. Now, that's good as far as it goes, but it raises an interesting question to me. And that is that why is it that the world's leading producer of a sustainable and quality product is willing to compete at home and around the world on a low price, low value, low quality approach? We can't beat the rest of the world on price point, but that is the game that we are strategically willing to play. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me as a national strategy. You know, we had a similar problem, a real crisis in the seafood industry in Alaska 10 years ago, and I participated in that because I was fishing at the time. I fished in the late 90s and on Bristol Bay, and I got $1.30 for sockeye salmon at the dock. And by 2002, I got 38 cents. I got a quarter for king salmon. Part of the problem was a huge increase in salmon imports, farm salmon imports from around the world, but that was just one piece. We thought that was the entire problem, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. Our problems had to do with falling prices, low liquidity. You couldn't borrow money to innovate your business. We had the wrong product mix. We put so much of our fish, salmon now, not everything, I'm just talking about salmon, into cans. And we were complacent. We said, we've got such a great product, they'll come to us. Well, we had quite a wake-up call. Maritime Alaska went into what I would call a depression. The permits actively fished declined by like a quarter. Some communities lost 70% of their seining fleet. A seiner, a big fishing boat, like in the pictures, is a small business. Employees, suppliers, lots of economic activity there. It's a business that happens to float. To lose 70% was just huge for small towns. We lost, either because they were bought out or went belly up, about half of our processors around the state. So we were getting ready to rezone Maritime Alaska for condos. Kind of a long way to go for a vacation condo, though. So we knew we needed major change, strategic change, and we got into, I won't go into the details of the program, but it was a locally controlled regional marketing grants, matching grant system, grants to processors for innovation and new kinds of marketing. We started doing some pretty intelligent things. We changed our product mix. We got out of the canned business and the H&G or head and gut business, more into fillets. And we got into new products that just plain worked, people wanted. Pouched salmon, boneless, skinless, canned fillets, salmon dog yummies, salmon wonderful magic oil that makes you more healthy, salmon burgers. It's a long list of successful products. More to the point, because we marketed on sustainability, which we had, and quality too, we changed the industry, not we, the industry was changed by this marketing drive. The marketing tail saying quality, quality, wagged the production dog. So what we produce now is different, and it's better from the boat to the throat. Plus we used bears. There's a bear in the picture. We always use bears. So what did this mean economically up there? For me, for my fishery on Bristol Bay, in the average gross earnings back in 2002, $37,000. I'm here to tell you, you can't hardly untie a fishing boat for a season with your expenses for $37,000 up there. Not in my fishery. You're out for the gurry and the character building exercise, not to make money. Over the period when we really worked these marketing programs and got real traction, that gross earnings in my fishery went up to $73,000, about double. Ex-vessel value, which means dockside value for the salmon industry in Alaska, increased from $163 million to over $500 million by 2010. And first wholesale value, which is also quite an interesting number, went from $500 million to $1 billion. In other words, this effort actually turned the industry around. And that's kind of cool. Alaska did something neat. But look at this little comparative graph and look at the opportunity that perhaps this country has, that our seafood industry has right now. The blue bars are what happened in Alaska. The orange ones are the rest of the seafood business in this country. Pounds, that's catch, supply. was down in these years, 2006 through 2008. I use those years for two reasons. One, I got good data for those years. And another, that's a period when the marketing program had real traction. Money was out there and it was working. So while catch was down, the price was so up that sales were up. All right, it's counterintuitive. You're selling less, but we got a lot more money for it. And of course, value and income was up too, compared to the rest of the country, which was flat. This is a pretty robust example of what can be accomplished. Let's look at employment. During that 2-year period, employment in the seafood business, Alaska's largest private employer, increased by 20%. Interesting, I gave this talk, or parts of it, in Boston, because, you know, how did it increase by 20%? And I chatted there with a seafood, a salmon executive, I guess you'd call him, who said that when they convert from a head and gut salmon line in a processing facility to a fillet line, they add 40 new hires. Now that's just the beginning of a value-added chain. You know, the fishermen and processing are where it starts. It just says here at the micro level what we know intuitively about value added and what we can see in other industries about value added. When you add value, you will add jobs. So just summing up, this really is something that can be achieved nationally. We need an industry-government regional partnerships to do this. We need to get out of the cheap world commodity business and into the food business where the U.S. stands tall, where we can compete. And there's a wonderful picture of my daughter and a fish. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I hope that sets a picture for the possibilities of what we have here to work with and how that can work in all these different areas. Next, I'd like to have Dane tell you a little bit about what's going on in the lobster industry in the Northeast and really what his challenges and what his opportunities are if he were to take advantage of this same type of model through these programs that we're suggesting.
Thank you, Bruce. While that number is still fresh in our minds, thank you, Phil. During the exact same period that seafood employment went up 20% in Alaska, it went down 30% in Maine. That was right after, 2008 and all that stuff. So the exact same period, we were in the part of the chart that was going in the wrong direction. And I'll refer to that again, but I just wanted to make that point because it is illustrative of what happens. Now, the fishing industry in New England, in the United States for that matter, is the oldest industry in our country. In fact, the fishing industry in New England actually predates colonial formation in the United States. And it's a long, proud history filled with heritage, filled with lots of stories. We have many multi-generational fishermen in the lobster industry. Some trace their heritage back 6 generations, and it's an artisanal fishery. It's a small boat fishery by regulation. We take conservation extremely seriously in Maine, and we're proud of that. We do the right things. We take care of the resource. We take care of the resource as well as the ecosystem in which that resource resides. Each boat is owned by one person, no corporations allowed, one captain, one boat, one license. And that's similar in other states in New England. So we have over 7,500 individual boats, average size about 35 feet, going out and harvesting lobster. In the United States, last year, we harvested around 115 million pounds. It's a fairly substantial fishery. It contributes over $1 billion in economic impact and positively in the state of Maine. And that's significant for a state with only 1.3 million people. And it's especially important in our coastal and rural communities, where the fishing industry is, for all intents and purposes, the only industry. It has been that way for quite some time. I'll also allude to the fact that, from a historical perspective, One of the things we've been dealing with is that we've actually been doing things pretty much the same way for about 300 years. So when somebody comes along and says, hey, I got an idea, let's do something different. It's a challenge. And kind of the story of making lemonade out of lemons, that economic crisis in 2008 really woke us up and caused us to stop and think about what we were doing and take a hard look at the industry. And just like Alaska, we found that things had changed. As the industry changes, we become more of a participant in a global economy. It's ultra competitive. The harvest 20 years ago was 1/4 the size it is now. The harvests were hitting record levels in Maine, and that's a testimony to the conservation ethic that we have, the sustainability practices that have been in place for well over 150 years. The first conservation measure in Maine was put into place in 1870. So as we talk about, we've been green long before it became fashionable. And we manage that fishery to a very, very strong conservation ethic, which is expensive. For every lobster that comes to market, 3 to 4 market-sized lobsters go back in the ocean for conservation measures. We only harvest about 1/10 of the biomass in the Gulf of Maine that's available. So understandably, fishermen need to make a living, need to make money. They'd love to go out and just take every lobster they can get, bring it to market, and make a nice payday. But we have very strong conservation measures, sustainability, and that literally costs us, we brought into shore about $325 million worth of lobster last year. And if you think about it, we put back 3 for every one we brought to market. We're putting $1 billion back in the ocean. That's an incredible statement of how seriously we take conservation and the expense that goes along with that. So a couple key numbers, some of the challenges that we faced were during that same period, as I said, our employment in seafood-related jobs went down 30%, very alarming. Over the last several years, perhaps even more alarming, as our catches increased, our supply is going up because we've been doing the right things. Shore price has gone down 40%. It's near subsistence level, where people are just making enough to keep going out fishing. Now keep in mind that when we talk about jobs in the seafood industry in Maine, these aren't jobs that are easily replaced. These are lifestyle jobs. These are all small business people. Everybody in the family's involved. It's a mom and pop operation by design, and it works that way. But when we have job displacement in the industry, or people have to give up fishing, it's nearly impossible to replace. We've seen communities, particularly island communities that are ultra vulnerable, literally collapse because the fishing industry couldn't support the local economy anymore. I'm not asking for sympathy, I'm just kind of explaining that that's the structure that we have in place, and we're very proud of that structure. We do not want to change it. We are not going to chase dollars and take resources out of the ocean that aren't replenishable or sustainable. So we do the right things. We also, all of our processing plants adhere to strict FDA guidelines, which are extraordinarily expensive and getting more stringent all the time. Other countries around the world do not have those same principles in mind when they harvest seafood and bring it to the U.S. One of the things that also was mentioned that only 15% of the U.S. supply of seafood consumed in the U.S. is provided by U.S. fisheries. I sometimes use the opposite when I talk with people around the country. This is a number that, to me, even though I know it, I've looked at it, I've talked about it, it still stuns me. 85% of all seafood consumed in the U.S. is imported from someplace else. 85%. And yet when I speak to groups around the country, it's almost so big a number people don't get it. We've lost, what, half of our market share in the last 15, 20 years? And there's nothing wrong with foreign imports in terms of they supply the marketplace, it's a needed import, but it's not a level playing field. They do not adhere to the same standards that we have here in the United States. We have a quality standard. They have a volume standard. So when we go to market, it's incumbent upon us to tell that story about quality, to tell that story about why we're proud of our American fisheries. And a couple quick things is that our industry, like most, have changed. Now, over 50% of all lobster harvested is processed in some way. In other fisheries, it's much more than that. But as that has changed, it's a challenge to keep our brand name, our Maine lobster brand, alive, because now you have lobster linguine, lobster alfredo, lobster roll, lobster salad, lobster stew. It's not a center of the plate item all the time, so people don't get that recognition of what a Maine lobster is all about. So it's a challenge for us. When we went through this economic crisis of our own, one of the things that we did was look for options of what we could do. And we looked at the Alaskan model and saw that we're not alone in this, other fisheries. We saw what they did and they said, duh, why don't we do that? Well, our industry, as I said, is populated by 7,500 harvesters, probably another 1,000 or so shoreside dealers. These are all very small businesses, none of which are equipped to take on a marketing challenge on a national basis, let alone a global basis. So we need to work together, and that's why we've been proud to be part of the National Seafood Marketing Coalition, because we're very confident. We've done some pilot programs based upon the success of Alaska, and we know that consumers respond to the message that we have. We know that they respond favorably and support our fishery. One of our best customers right now, Red Lobster, some of you may have seen their recent commercials. They don't show a pretty lobster on a plate anymore this year. What they're showing is a couple, a man and a woman, husband and wife, on a lobster boat in Spruce Head, Maine, practicing their craft, taking care of the environment. That's the message. It's not just about lobster, it's about lobstering, lobster communities, lobster boats, the whole package. And if we can find a way to communicate that to the American public, I'm sure that they would support this and help us support our valuable fishing communities. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Dane. Next we have Jack Brooks. Jack's is our version of a local guy here. I think he's about a half hour away in the car. So Jack's got a completely different set of circumstances, but the same type of opportunities. So we'll give you a different version of the same story. Go ahead, Jack.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you all for coming. As Bruce said, Jack Brooks, I'm in Cambridge, Maryland. We are a blue crab meat processor and have been for several years. Most of these industries or businesses are small family-owned businesses, multi-generational companies or individuals, fishermen, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generations. And these jobs are located in rural coastal America, very rural, a lot of islands, places that there are no other job opportunities. And this is really a way of life. It's a tradition that's existed for hundreds of years, harvesting seafood in the bay, and we certainly hope it continues to be successful and thrive in the future. Speaking of multi-generational, my great-grandfather started our company in 1890, and so I'm the fourth generation. My oldest son is the fifth generation. That's pretty typical. Maybe not quite that old, or maybe a little bit older, but 2, 3, 4 generation businesses, both on the water to the fisherman side and also the shore side facilities. The blue crab I'm going to talk about, actually it goes all the way from the coast commercially, from Maryland to Texas, but I'm going to talk about the Maryland or the Chesapeake portion of it today. Back in the 1990s, things were going along pretty well. Back in the 1990s, though, we started seeing huge influx of crab, similar crab, a substitute crab from Southeast Asia, and some from South America, Central America, which totally, like in the salmon, just totally decimated our whole price structure. We went from over 50 seafood processing or crab processing plants in Maryland from 1995 to less than 20 now. The 20 that have survived are striving, trying to find niche markets, because that's where they see the people who really want to pay the price and willing to pay the price for local, sustainable, accountable, fresh, good crab and good seafood. But when this happened, we thought, gosh, well, you know, what are we going to do about it? So we in 1999-2000, filed a 201 petition through the International Trade Commission, thinking, okay, well, let's get some tariffs to level this economic playing field. So we did and lost. We were not successful, unfortunately. But what we learned through that was a real benefit. It was an unintended benefit with all the free press we got about the petition, and people reaching out and contacting us, our trade organizations, all up and down the coast, domestic, from Texas all the way up here to Maryland, said, you know, I had no idea I was eating all this crab from away. You know, I thought it was, you know, Chesapeake style or Chesapeake Bay, Maryland crab. Little did I know when I asked my restaurant server or went into the grocery store and started looking at the fine print on the can that, gee, I was eating stuff from China or Philippines or someplace like that. I want to eat local. I want, you know, and so we got a nice little kick from that. So by getting the word out there, unintentionally, but it worked for a time, you know, all these, we got a nice little boost, a nice little kick in our market share with the general public, you know, out there seeking out Maryland or domestic crab. But that soon faded. You know, people stopped looking, the story got old, and they started looking at prices again and not asking their server or people at their point of purchase where their crab came from. So, but that did show us that, hey, there are people out there willing and to pay a little bit more to support American business, and they want accountable, they want sustainable, they want fresh, they want American. And so that was a nice, again, test that kind of quite accidental. Over the years in the Chesapeake, there have been a lot of sacrifices made, especially the last 4 or 5 years, to rebuild the stocks of crabs, and now the abundance of crabs is back. The abundance of crabs is at one of the highest levels it's been for years. But we've got a situation where dockside values are less now than they were in 1990, 1995. I have fishermen coming to me and saying, why am I getting less for my crabs than I did 15, 20 years ago? And I said, don't tell me I know the answer, it's what they tell me. But obviously, you know, with the cost of fuel, everything they touch, the price has gone up. So we've got a terrible situation going on here where our costs of doing business are increasing exponentially, especially with fuel. But what we're getting for our products is going down. So we had a little success story, as was mentioned with the salmon people. Whole Foods has turned out to be one of our very, very good customers, and unfortunately, they don't take enough to float the entire boat. But we seek them out for several years, and one day they called and said, hey, you know, have you got some stuff to ship us? It's turned out into a great relationship, and that their customer base really wants accountable, all these things that I described. And they send down busloads of seafood managers to tour our place, to learn what we do, so they can go back and tell the story. There's a lot of people have this romance. They've got this thing with the guys working on the water, as was mentioned, and you know, with lobstermen on the commercial. And so they come down and we show them what we do. It's a real eye-opener for all of them. They go back and they sell, and it's worked out very, very well. We need a lot more stories like that, and it's going to be hard to do, because coming back from the Boston Seafood Show, has been mentioned here several times, we occupy a little booth that the state of Maryland takes out, and we get a half of a 6-foot table, and I don't know how many times we had people come up and say, I don't think you could get Maryland crab anymore, you know. And I've had people at the show here say, you can't get Maryland anymore. You got to buy this other stuff. And refreshing for them that they found us, refreshing for us that, you know, we got the word out. So we need something to sustain, create jobs here in our rural communities. We need to get the prices up at dockside, so these fishermen won't be at risk of going off the water, losing a way of life, and watching that whole tradition evaporate. And a national seafood marketing strategy program is a natural. Look what Alaska did. You know, the proof's in the pudding. It can be successful. You got to get the word out. People got to know, and they've got to see it, not on a one-shot basis like our Trade Commission accident, nice accident, but they need to see it every day. They need to be reminded, hey, there are options out there. If you want the import, it's there. If you want the domestic, it's there. You know, you get what you want, and the people who have that option in front of them will choose, we know, through these couple tests, we'll choose the domestic Maryland seafood. So that's about it.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Well, you can see here, once again, we have sort of a completely different problem, but the solution, the end solution seems to be the same, is of creating new demand, broadening these markets with new products, and supplying what the public needs and what the public asks for, and being able to let them know that it is there. So we had a point here that Alaska did this in an experiment, and well, gee, maybe that's the only place you can do it, and they got lucky or whatever. But we found another opportunity. We found another example of how it can be done. We found it down in San Diego. And so it's nice to know that it wasn't an anomaly for that particular experiment. And we brought Natalie Webster with the American Albacore Association here to tell you what they did.
Thank you all. I am from San Diego, California, and it was the tuna capital of the world, the tuna capital of the world. And back in the 80s, the tuna fleet and all the processing went offshore, and the tuna fleet went foreign flag. As a result of that, in San Diego, which the two industries were military and fishing, it was very, very challenging. Well, the albacore fishery, which catches every fish one at a time with a pole, one fish, one man, one at a time, sustained, but no one really knew about it. My grandfather migrated here from Portugal in the 1900s and was a pole tuna fisherman out of San Diego, as was my father, as is my husband. But our tuna was lumped into commodity trading, just like all other tunas, yellowfin, skipjack, all commodity traded. So our small fishery, depending on what the commodity pricing was, that's what the fisherman would get. He wouldn't know what he was going to get when he left the dock. When he came in with a full load of fish, he was told what he was going to get, and he had no choice. So my father looked at my husband and said, "You are in a dying fishery, not that the fish were going to go away. Our stock is healthy. The fishermen are going to go away." So that was kind of my inspiration, because I totally believed if we told the story of these wonderful fishermen, their families, the communities that support them, this U.S. tradition, the U.S. consumers would embrace it and say, no, 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 no. I want to know where I can buy that. Because when you go down our grocery aisles, what you commonly see is imported tuna, processed in other countries, harvested by foreign vessels, harvested illegally, IUU, illegal, unidentified, unregulated wild seafood harvest, the biggest risk to our wild seafood populations today. So, in parallel from representing pole and trawl albacore fishermen, not only in California, but in Oregon and Washington, so I'm representing fishermen from 3 states here today. We decided, well, if we educate the consumer, we need to drive them somewhere, right? They're gonna get all excited, and how can I help? Well, none of our tuna's on the shelf, or in the fresh seafood case, so what do we drive them to? So our 6 fishing families, which we started, formed American Tuna. We each contributed 1 ton of albacore tuna, which is, by the way, the best albacore tuna anywhere in the world, the fattiest, incredible. I have samples here for you guys to take home. Don't drain the can. There's nothing in it but albacore. Anyway, we put our own labels on our cans, and we canned our first 6 tons. We went to Whole Foods Market with our great story, and it's a totally transparent story. No smoke and mirrors, just everything on the label is actually true. And they took us to the first store in La Jolla, California. The second store was in Hillcrest within a month, and we were national within 12 months. We are in zoos and aquariums across the nation. Disneyland just put us in our first venue in Disneyland, which is amazing. And we're canned in Oregon, and it's all done by hand. Why is that? No investment in mechanizing our facilities. All the canneries left are little mom and pop stores, which are great. We're never going to be able to compete with labor, and we're never going to be a contradiction to our name. We're not going to can offshore where it would be a lot less expensive, because we're going to create jobs, and we believe the coalition is the first step in that direction to getting investment to create processing, create jobs, and not just have our fishermen harvesting the fish and exporting it to countries all over the world and us eating foreign fish. We want us to can what we catch and preserve the fishermen forever. I don't want to explain to my grandchildren what a U.S. fisherman was. I want them to be able to see them and say, hey, you know what? I know where my fish came from. We all want to know where our food comes from. And seafood is such a valuable resource. And the fishermen and their families and communities, I think the story just needs to be told. And with that telling of that story, I truly believe we can save this industry. And thank you very much for your time.
How do you beat that? Huh? David, how do you beat that? You're the end of, this is it, so yeah, yeah. She might be small, but she's got big shoes to fill there on that one, so. David Veal is the Executive Director of the American Shrimp Processors Association. All the shrimp processing everywhere from Florida all the way to Texas. They've been through, as you know, a lot in the last 5 years, 6, 7, 8 years. I lose count. Seems like forever. Yeah, forever and ever. And David's got a completely different set of challenges, but maybe even bigger opportunities than everybody else. So, David?
Thanks. I'm David Veal. I'm Executive Director of the American Shrimp Processors Association. Our members process more than 70% of the warm water shrimp produced in the Gulf and South Atlantic, which amounts to about 200 million pounds a year. What seems like a lot of shrimp is less than 8% of the total U.S. domestic market of 1.3 billion pounds for shrimp, the rest of that being imported product. 50 years ago, when I first started working with the seafood industry, any community in Shore Point along the Gulf was dotted with seafood-related businesses. It was easy to tell that seafood was a major employer along the Gulf. Gradually, as the U.S. economy improved, demand for waterfront property increased, and local leaders naturally looked at those multi-generational facilities on the waterfront, often blighted, as an opportunity for higher valued tourism and retail establishments. And gradually over time, we saw the seafood industry disappear in the Gulf from the visible waterfront, a picture you see in many parts of this country. Naturally, the perception began to develop that seafood was a dead or a dying industry. That was not and is not the case. It is a viable industry. It certainly has fewer firms today than it had 50 years ago. It employs fewer people, has fewer vessels, but it has more efficient vessels, it has more efficient processing plants, and certainly has more value than it ever has. It's a changing industry, not a dying industry. While this occurred, the American appetite for seafood increased dramatically, as you saw from Phil's slide. The result was this difference in demand and production. Because our fisheries are sustainably managed, we have an inability to dictate what kind of harvest we might have. Harvests are essentially capped for us, and we've had stable harvest in the Gulf for shrimp since 1952, with annual fluctuations that go up and down, but not a substantial difference, and we still harvest that today. So we don't have an ability to take advantage of that expanding marketplace. What that essentially has done for the shrimp industry, and for many industries, is to marginalize our place in the market. 50 years ago, the Gulf was the major supplier of shrimp in the U.S. market. As I've just shown you, those numbers are or that certainly is not the case today. We no longer control the market, but are only a small fragment of the marketplace. During the last decade, and first half of the last decade, imports increased in shrimp in this country at 15 to 25% a year, having a dramatic negative effect in the marketplace, driving down prices each year. In 2005, we were successful the industry was successful at having successful anti-dumping cases against several foreign countries, and won those cases. What we immediately saw was a leveling out and a stabilizing of the market. Unfortunately, after that occurred, we had 3 hurricanes, a recession, and an oil spill. The fact that any seafood-related business in the Gulf is still in business is a credit to their tenacity. Very few firms can survive that in a single decade and still be in existence. One thing that it does leave us with is an industry that is cash-strapped. Not only shrimp, but oysters and virtually any other business that is in the Gulf is cash-strapped. The ability to innovate, to do research, to develop new products, and to market simply is not in the cards given the existing economic condition of those industries. There is hope for those, and that hope is in a marketing program, a fishery development program, much like that is being supported and developed and been discussed by the coalition and from the various regions of this country. Without a small infusion of cash, much like that was done in Alaska, we are destined to see the American fisheries continue to decline. I think if you look at the jobs, 130,000 jobs in the Gulf and the seafood business, $18 billion, let me get my numbers right, $18 billion in sales impacts and an income impact of $3.7 billion. The number of jobs and the impact of those sales really pales compared to the impact that those jobs have on the small communities, rural communities in the Gulf and in fact around the country. In many areas, the seafood-related jobs are the very fabric of community life. And the loss of those will not only destroy a way of life, but potentially can devastate an economy that will take generations to recover in a region. If you look at what happened in Alaska, and I'm going to add this to what I've said earlier, if you look at what happened in Alaska, the addition of $32 million over a 4-year period took an industry that was in the same situation the Gulf shrimp industry is in and most Gulf fisheries are in, and made them the envy and the class not only of this country, but in the world. And you have to ask yourself what a small investment in U.S. fisheries like that could do for the rest of the country. Mr. Chairman?
You filled those shoes up pretty good. Really good. So that really concludes our presentation. And we wanted everyone to just leave with the thought that when you look at the suggestion that David made, you look at the numbers that Phil has thrown out there and what is possible to take a fishery that's got problems and allow it to double its value in 5 years. It shows you what the American public can do with their dollars in the marketplace. They just have to know what's going on. They have to be educated, and they have to be offered the products that they need and the products that they want. So we put together this particular presentation to show that. And I just want to leave with, you think that maybe this is some new idea. Well, it was about 60 years ago. There was a program that was put together in Congress. And the whole point of the exercise that they put this together was to promote and develop seafood products. This is 60 years ago. And this is all about exactly what we're talking here. It's the same position we were in 50 years ago. And they were gonna do that by increasing the free flow of domestically produced seafood through commerce. Sounds like something from right out from, 2012. Well, that's right out of 1954. So it's not really a new idea. It's just we need to put these ideas back into practice. And, it isn't also a new idea for different industries in the United States. The tourism industry, look at the farm industry. We'll know all about that when we go through the ag bill next year. As many of you in this room probably know exactly what I'm talking about. $300 billion in 5 years, that's a pretty good budget. So the seafood industry, has been around since the colonial times. That other industry that they say is the oldest one, well, this is damn near as old. So I want to leave you with those thoughts that this is something that can do. We're going to continue to work with everybody in this room. We're going to continue to work with your bosses and everybody in your home towns to try to figure out how to make this work. And we do have a few more minutes if anybody does have any questions of these folks. Frank Blum is one of our original members. He's from South Carolina, shrimp and all kinds of other things he processes.
Thank you all, because the facts are the facts, and the way you put them out, it makes them clearer for all of us. We've got something hiding in plain sight here. USDA has recommended that we double our intake of seafood. And they didn't do that to make us rich. They did it for health reasons. 310 million people times 16 pounds, which is our per capita now, is a hell of a lot of seafood. We had that market open, and for some reason we're not advertising that, or it's not getting out that people should be eating more seafood.
That's my mother told me. And that's true, the food pyramid. Yes?
I thought those were great stories. Thank you guys for all coming. It seemed like if you had to pick, there were a few strategies. One is American seafood, buy American seafood. That would work for all of you, all of your industries. But then for some of you, very local strategies worked. The blue crab particularly, that, a national marketing strategy might not have helped you at that time, or maybe would have. What would you pick? Would you pick national or your own regional, local fishery, if you had to? Not that you want to, but if you had to, what would you do?
Well, it's a perfect question. One of the key points of the plan that we've laid out, we've distributed it over the last several years, had meetings with so many folks, primarily in the Senate, but over in the House side too, is that you hit on it exactly. Every region is different. One size does not fit all. There have been different tries at a national seafood plan over the years, and they've all failed because they were all put together to be a one-size-fits-all. And so the plan that we've put together would provide for regional control of those plans. So what works up in the Northeast region for codfish and scallops and lobsters may be a completely different strategy than something that's going to work down in the Gulf with the shrimp. And when you put local expertise from all parts of the industry that needs it, from the support sector all the way to the fishing industry, and even into local governments that can control regulations and all those types of things. You put that package together on a regional basis, and you don't have to pick one over the other. Oh, I'm stunned. Okay. Well, if that's it, then we really appreciate you coming. We'll look forward to seeing you all again at another venue.